Well, shalom, brothers. Good morning to you. I hope it's chilly for you enough today. And today is prep day for leaving for the ruckus. So I know that I am notorious for being long-winded, so I'm going to try to make this as short as possible. And but I got some good things that I'd like to get into the Word with you. So, so you saw my links to my videos, and that was just kind of a teaser. To get you thinking about what's going on here in chapter 21 of the book of John. And, sometimes the devotional is meant to be thought-provoking as well. So, but more than that, that's a whole thought process and subject in and of itself as far as the video is concerned. And that's great. But I just wanted to also show you guys that there's more to me than a tinfoil hat. So I want to dig into chapter 21 and point out a few things and just kind of illustrate. We think we know Yeshua, right? But it's interesting how relatable, even all the way back then, how people interact, and you can just imagine the scene sometimes of what's going on, and how actual relatable the same thing happens today. So anyway, bear with me. Alrighty, so in chapter 21 of John, we're going to start in verse 15. And this Bible entitles this section as Jesus restores Peter, but let's look at that real quick. So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to him, "Feed my lambs." Verse 16, he said to him again a second time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to him, "Tend my sheep." Verse 17, he said to him the third time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" Peter was grieved because he said this to him a third time. "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Most assuredly, I say to you, when you were younger, you girded yourself and walked where you wished. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will gird you and carry you where you do not wish." This he spoke, signifying by what death he would glorify God. And he had spoken this, he said to him, "Follow me." So that last verse that we just read, which is verse 18, starts kind of the premise of going into the remaining of the chapter through verse 25 into the video that I shared with you guys, which I do hope that you found interesting, and there's a whole study that you can deep dive into that. So, but I want to focus on these aforementioned verses 15 through 18 and just reiterate that first of all, Jesus asked Peter. Now this, to give you some context here, this is post-resurrection. Peter's already, Peter denied him. He went through the crucifixion, work of restoration and redemption process, and here we are, like he's the third time, as mentioned in verse 14. Now this is the third time that Jesus showed himself to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. So I think that's significant. We're having a conversation here after Yeshua was raised from the dead, and it's specifically involving Peter. who denied him. And then it goes into, Yeshua asking him 3 times in a row, do you love me? And I can almost kind of imagine it playing out in my mind. Do you love me? Do you love me more than these? More than who? Because that was the first question in 15. Do you love me more than these? Is he talking about the rest of the disciples? Is he talking about the rest of the quote-unquote believers? Who's he referencing? But then the second and third question is, do you love me? And the third time he asks it, Peter has already responded the same answer twice. You know that I love you. And it's almost as if Yeshua, it's kind of like leans in. I hear you say you love me, but do you love me? Wow. So the thought here is, everything was written in Scripture for our benefit, right? According to Scripture. So one has to ask himself, if you insert yourself into this situation here and imagine, is Yeshua asking that same question of us? And should he have to ask us 3 times? What's the significance of that? Like, sounds like the individual that Yeshua is speaking to is missing the point. And so that begs the question, well, how do we love him? And he's already said that aforementioned. If you love me, you obey my commandments. If you love me, you do the will of my Father. So there's several examples given by which we know how to love Yeshua, right? And so the second thing that I want to point out in these very same verses is there's 3 things in addition to the 3 questions. Each time Yeshua says, he starts out with, feed my lambs. So lambs, we are understanding to be young sheep. Then the second time he says, tend my sheep. And then the third time, at the end of verse 17, he says, feed my sheep. So we have feed the lambs, feed the little ones. Then we have tend the sheep. The sheep are full grown, supposed to be mature, and feed my sheep. So I think there's some significance in that right there, as far as Peter's being established here. Yeshua's already told him prior to the work of redemption that you're going to be the rock. And so Peter's kind of being established here, and I think it's interesting how I think that speaks to leadership about, who's leading Yeshua's flock and taking care of the little ones and taking care of the mature ones. So without being overly long-winded and going too deep in that, I just wanted to point out those 2 things, where Yeshua leans in and says, but do you love me? How convicting is that? That should strike us in the heart. Are we doing enough? We're loving him enough? I hope that resonates with you guys. I love you. And I got a lot of packing to do and can't wait to do this Ruck March with you. So we'll see you. Shalom.